Dreams are the brain's late-night theater, where REM sleep stars as the director, orchestrating bizarre yet captivating stories that influence our emotional balance. Let's hear from neuroscientist Dr. Andrew Huberman as he unravels the mysteries of sleep and dreams, sharing his knowledge to help us achieve a better night's rest.
REM sleep is fascinating. There's this weird stage of our life that happens more toward morning that we call REM sleep. In REM sleep, we are paralyzed. We are experiencing what's called atonia, which just means that we're completely laid out and paralyzed, where we're hallucinating and having these outrageous experiences in our mind. Sleep is this tremendously important period of life because it resets our ability to be focused, alert, and emotionally stable in the wakeful period. We might dream, we might twitch, we might even wake up, but in sleep, we are only in relation to things that are happening within our brain and body, because it turns out that the period that we call sleep and the period we call wakefulness are tethered to one another. What we do in the waking state determines when we fall asleep, how quickly we fall asleep, whether or not we stay asleep, and how we feel when we wake up the next day. Sleep is the absolute foundation of your mental health, your physical health, and your performance in all endeavors. When you open your eyes, light comes into your eyes. Now, the way this system works is that you have a particular set of neurons in your eye, they're called retinal ganglion cells, that perceives a particular type of light and communicates that to this clock that resides right above the roof of your mouth, called the suprachiasmatic nucleus. And the suprachiasmatic nucleus has connections with essentially every cell and organ of your body. We know, based on a lot of evidence, that if you don't get your cortisol and melatonin rhythms right, there are tremendously broad and bad effects on cardiovascular health, dementia, metabolic effects, learning, depression. When we wake up, our eyes open. Now, if we're in a dark room, there isn't enough light to trigger the correct timing of this cortisol melatonin thing. Well, it turns out that these neurons in our eye that set the circadian clock and then allow our circadian clock to set all the clocks of all the cells and organs and tissues of our body responds best to a particular quality of light. What you want to do is get sunlight in your eyes as close to waking as possible. It's critically important that you get outside to get this light. Now, if you can't see the sunrise, once the sun is overhead, the quality of light shifts so that you miss this opportunity to time the cortisol pulse. And that turns out to be a bad thing to do. A late shifted cortisol pulse, in particular a 9 p.m. or 8 p.m. increase in cortisol, is one of the consequences and maybe one of the causes of a lot of anxiety disorders and depression, which means you need a lot of photons, ideally coming from sunlight, to set these clock mechanisms. So looking at your phone or artificial lights is fine if you wake up before sunrise, but it's not going to work to set these clock mechanisms. If you can't see sunlight because of your environment, then you are going to have to opt for artificial light. And in that case, you're going to want an artificial light that either simulates sunlight or has a lot of blue light. Or you might be saying, wait, I've heard blue light is bad for me. Actually, blue light is great for this mechanism during the day. Blue light, in particular blue light and yellow light coming from sunlight, is ideal. If you're going to get it from artificial light because you can't get enough sunlight, well then, artificial lights that are rich in blue wavelengths are going to be ideal for setting this mechanism. Viewing light early in the day, ideally sunlight, is key for establishing healthy sleep-wake rhythms and for allowing you to fall asleep easily at night. You can actually use light to wake up earlier. Jamie Zeitzer and colleagues did a beautiful study showing that if you turn on the lights before waking up, so around 45 minutes to an hour before waking up, even if your eyelids are closed, provided you're not under the covers, after doing that for a few days, that increases your total sleep time and shifts forward the time at which you feel sleepy. It makes you want to go to bed earlier each night. If you're having trouble waking up early and feeling alert early in the day, you're going to want to try and get bright light exposure even before waking up, because it will advance your clock. It's sort of like turning the clock forward. Whereas if you are having trouble waking up early, you definitely don't want to get too much light exposure or any light exposure to your eyes late in the evening and in the middle of the night, because it's just going to delay your clock more and more. So what determines how well we sleep and the quality of our wakeful state? The first force is a chemical force. It's called adenosine. Adenosine is a molecule in our nervous system and body that builds up the longer we are awake. So if you just slept for 8 or 9 or 10 really deep restful hours, adenosine is going to be very low in your brain and body.